Hello and welcome to the Aquarius Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed, and do I have something special for everyone today? So this episode, why am I starting out so strange? Well, this episode was lost to the Peruvian electronic interference lav mic nonsense, right? So you'd all probably remember, hopefully most of you remember this, 3 interviews that are recorded down in Peru were basically almost unusable, right? The only reason I was able to put out one interview with Dean, myself, and Corey in the hotel room was because Corey had his own recorder that picked up enough of Dean and I that we could actually go ahead and put that episode out. So an episode with Dr. Anthony Mazarol, which I did reschedule, and so I did release that episode, and then Devon Graham. So Devon Graham runs MT Amazon, the trip that I was on, kind of one of the head tropical fish guys, just an absolute awesome human being and a walking fish encyclopedia. His interview was also basically ruined, but there's a shining knight coming in, right? There's a gentleman by the name of Dave Blanks. Listener, Dave Blanks, out of Boone, North Carolina, sound engineer, sound wizard, whatever you want to call him, right? He says, Randy, send me that episode. Let me see what I can do with it. I can fix some audio files. And I'm thinking, this thing, no way. Who knows what's going to happen? So I say, okay, Dave, let's go ahead and let's set that up. And I actually delay a couple days, but I get it to him nonetheless. And just a couple days later, he sends it back with 3 different versions of cleaned up audio. So it is now passable. It is better than passable. It's probably even better than the normal episodes that I put out as far as audio quality, because Dave Blanks in Boone, North Carolina is absolutely awesome. So everybody, thank Dave Blanks for this episode, for me being able to release it. Devon was fantastic. I can't wait for the next time I get to interact with Devon in person, whether it's in Florida where he lives or Peru where he kind of also lives because he's there for so long. He's just an amazing, amazing person. Loved hanging out and getting to know Devon. And to give some sponsorship credit where it is due. So that trip sponsored, partially sponsored, whatever you want to call it, by Awaza. They helped me get down to Peru, and basically everything, whether it be YouTube content or interview stuff, is going to be sponsored by Awaza. So, still awesome people that are there. I still really enjoy my interactions with them. I still run a Biomaster 600 on my 75-gallon Tetra Crypt kind of awesome tank of what it's, what this main display tank has morphed into. So great people at Awaza. More than happy to have them sponsor this kind of lost episode from the Peruvian Amazon. So enough of me rambling on about this episode. One more time, Dave Blanks, Boone, North Carolina. This episode is really possible because of you. So I hope everybody, just in the back of your mind, you say, Dave, thank you very much. Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Tuesday, the 13th of
August.
Of August, yes. I'm losing track of time here. So this is day 2 of the MT Amazon expedition. We are in Peru in the Peruvian Amazon, and I'm here with Devon Graham. Devon Graham is, what is your official title, Devon?
Pretty much whatever you want to call me. Boat builder, general manager, gopher, president, whatever. I do everything.
Most definitely a little bit of everything, but I would say kind of the head honcho, I guess, for the most part, kind of running.
Yeah, social director.
Social director, there we go. So we are on day 2 of this expedition. This is my first time being down here. It has been an absolutely awesome experience so far, and you, just in passing conversation, whether it was with me or with somebody else, me overhearing it, there's so much to your backstory that who you are is, I don't even think I could have made it up, right? As far as your experiences, how you got to this point here. So why don't you go ahead and kind of, from an Aquarius perspective, how did you get your start in the hobby?
Well, I don't really consider myself to be a hobbyist as such. I love fish. I love tropical fish. I have a few tanks myself, but I've never really been into breeding fish. But my first recollection of seeing aquarium fish was at boarding school in Kenya when I was 8 years old. The head person at the house had a fish tank which had hatchet fish, marbled hatchet fish, corydoras, and some kind of tetra. I don't remember what kind it was, but I distinctly remember the marbled hatchetfish and the corridoras. So, middle of Africa, and the first aquarium fish I'm seeing are South American fish.
Nice.
And then I loved reading about the Amazon. I'd just devour all the stories I could get. I lived for 6 years in Africa when I was a kid, and I just thought that the Amazon was so remote that I would probably never, ever, ever get a chance to see it. Going on 26 years ago now, I was finishing up my PhD at the University of Miami, and got put in contact with a person that had started MT Amazon expeditions, actually, under a different name at that point in time, and the person who started Project Amazonas, and we were put in contact by a mutual friend who was the curator of fishes at the Dallas Aquarium at the time. He invited me to come down to Peru and said, hey, I'm going down next month, why don't you come? So I came down for a week, came back the next summer for a couple of months, and then just kept coming back, and now I spend about 5 to 6 months total time out of the year down here, and the rest of my time is in Miami or wherever I happen to be traveling.
Wow, and that was your first time coming down to Peru was when you got invited down?
Correct, that was 1994.
Okay. And then let's get some background on your education. And this was something that, I didn't know you had a PhD when I was coming on at this cruise, which, I didn't know you, so I wasn't like
higher and deeper.
It wasn't like I was judging you or anything, but what's your educational background? So from, BS, your master's program, and then PhD, like what?
Yeah, no, from the time I was a kid, I knew I was going to be a biologist. 7 or 8 year old, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be a biologist when I grow up. There was never any question.
And I forgot. I'm sorry, Devon. I have to pause you right now because we forgot to mention that the marmoset in the room.
You're not supposed to talk about things like that.
No.
The elephant in the room, marmoset in the room. Yeah, right now I have a rescue baby marmoset sitting on my shoulder underneath my T-shirt. It's falling asleep.
It was eating delicious bananas.
I kind of look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame right now.
Yeah.
Because I got this lump on my shoulder that occasionally twitches.
And it's important to say that it's a rescue. So we were at this village where we were collecting, and one of the kids had it as a pet, and it sounds like under those conditions it probably wasn't going to be the best for it. And so what are we going to do with this thing?
Well, there is a rescue center for primates that we'll be visiting in a few days, and so we'll keep the marmoset on board the boat with us and feed it and take care of it, and then we will be dropping it off to a rescue center where they actually rehabilitate primates back into the wild. Mm-hmm. We've taken other primates there, and some of them have actually been taken back. Some of the rarer species, they get a group of them together and, that are socialized, and then they have a whole protocol for releasing them into the wild so that they're ensuring that they can take care of themselves, mm-hmm. and they're not just going to die. If we took this baby marmoset and let it loose in the woods, it would last 1 or 2 days.
I can imagine.
But before something ate it, a hawk, an owl, it wouldn't know how to forage for itself. It would starve.
What would you guess the age of this one?
Probably 2 months old, I would guess.
Yeah, just a baby.
But just a baby still.
Yeah.
The male marmosets carry the babies around, so I'm its new daddy.
What's the theory? I mean, and I don't mean to, talk bad of the village that we came from, but typically, how do they come across these animals? Are they actually killing the parent and then taking the baby, or are they scaring the parent away and are then able to get the baby from that situation?
Typically, the way anybody gets a baby animal here is through hunting. Mm. So, they're out hunting in the woods, and local people hunt for, they're not doing it for fun. They're hunting for food.
It's subsistence living.
Subsistence living. And so you shoot a monkey, you shoot an agouti, or whatever animal it is that happens to have a baby. With pacas, one of the big jungle rodents that's very favored meat. They'll shoot a female paca, and it's obviously pregnant, so they'll actually do a C-section, deliver the baby on the spot, take the baby back home, and it becomes the kid's pet.
Wow, I need a Google image that animal, unless we have a reference book upstairs.
We don't have that one on there, but a paca is gets to about 30, 35 pounds.
Wow.
Sort of looks like a short-legged deer.
Okay.
some stripes and some spots on it.
Wow.
Like a miniature Bambi.
That is insane that they would actually perform a C-section and then raise that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And the baby pacas get very tame. I mean, they'll run around the house, and they seem to do very well. I mean, they're a rodent. I mean, oversized rat, so very adaptable.
You can't make that up. Like I
No.
feel like you can't. You can't make that up. Wow.
No.
So before I interrupted you with the marmot in the room, or the marmoset in the room, I'm sorry. Marmot, thinking of back home. Your education, so you always knew you were going to be into biology, you're going to be a biologist.
Yeah, so I did an undergraduate degree in Michigan in zoology and minored in French and chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why. But actually the French served me well because I did a couple years in the Peace Corps in West Africa where I used French every day. Did the Peace Corps, and then I did a master's degree in marine biology in Washington State, your home state now.
Yeah.
Out on Puget Sound, where I studied sea anemones and their association with zooxanthellae and zoochlorellae, two types of algae that actually live inside the tissues of the sea anemones.
Oh, wow.
And from there I went to University of Miami because they had a really good program in tropical ecology. And I've always loved the tropics. Spent too many years in the Canadian prairies as a teenager, freezing my butt off, and I don't miss winter at all. So Miami was a good place to go to, and I didn't expect to stay there, but I stayed there ever since. But I basically did 3 years of field work in Costa Rica for my PhD, and I was radio tracking birds and seeing where they were taking seeds that they were eating, and looking at the ecological relationship between birds and understory plants and looking at seed dispersal issues.
Yeah, because that's a major evolutionary move, for lack of a more scientific word, for some of these plants is to have an attractive fruit or whatever it may be for a bird to then consume it, take it somewhere else.
Absolutely. And then when you come down here to the Amazon, you have fish doing the same thing that birds do in other places. A lot of trees have fruits that are attractive to fish. They fruit at the high water season when, the forest can be flooded for miles and miles and miles, and fish are attracted to the sound of fruits dropping in the water. They come and eat the fruit, and then they poop out the seeds somewhere else, and so you got seed dispersal by fish.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when it comes to scientific naming of animals, so obviously being around you, I have seen you, take a quick glance at a fish and just spit out the scientific name. And for me, there's a couple areas as an aquarist that I as the years go on, I want to strengthen in my ability to name fish with the scientific name, and also just a better understanding of water chemistry, a more intimate understanding of water chemistry and the impact that they have on fish. So for me, those are two areas that I'm going to continually work on. So I'm just absolutely amazed, like rockstar idol status, when you're just calling out, when you're just hitting genuses and species, and then it's fun when you're like, it could be that species, but then it's like them so well that you can debate it in your head, as opposed to you have like this fledgling understanding and you go all in on one species you think it is, but enough to like debate within yourself on which species it may be. So
idiot savant. because then it's like oh well, shoot, who's that person's name? We're only 8 of us on the boat, and I have to stop and think, geez, what's the name of that guy right across the table? I know it, but it takes me a moment to come up with it, and for some reason I just scientific names just pop into mind. But
nice. And so so many of these fish down here. Also, we came across, when we were going out to the discus farm, air quotes, the frog. So there was a frog in the forest, and you knew the scientific name for that. And then also with your ornithological? Ornithological?
Yep.
Is there supposed to be a
ornithological?
There you go, okay.
Bird stuff.
You know scientific names for birds as well. So would you say that you know more reptiles, amphibian scientific names? Would you say you know more fish? Do you know more birds?
Yes.
To which one? To all?
No, it's it just varies depending on which group I'm going with. Sometimes I'm with groups that are interested in snakes and frogs and lizards and salamanders, and so I tend to focus on those. And every group that I go with, there's somebody on that group that knows more about a particular group of organisms than I do. I guess I just sort of act like a sponge and soak it up and absorb some of that knowledge, and it goes into little compartments somewhere up there in the gray matter, and at weird points in time it just gets regurgitated.
Nice. Yeah, because it's funny. You either refer to something with its like Peruvian Spanish name, or you'll refer to it with its scientific name. You don't ever use the common name that I might be used to.
Yeah. When it comes to the English common name, I sometimes have to struggle with that because I'm used to the crew or the local people calling it by the local name, and I know the scientific name because then that's universal regardless of where you are. It means the same animal.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to other things like boat parts and woodworking and stuff like that, sometimes I have to struggle to find the English word, whereas the Spanish one just comes right like that, because here is where I learned the terminology to start with, and then I learned the Spanish term first and the English term later on. And
so you took French in undergrad.
I had French in high school and undergrad, yeah.
Okay, and your Spanish is fluent, I would say. You're fluent in Spanish. Right?
My grammar can be pretty bad, but I get by. People that don't know any Spanish think I'm fluent because I just rattle it off and I don't care.
Nice. So you didn't speak any Spanish when you came down here then?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because what I've found, and I talked with Michael about this when he and I interviewed, or when I interviewed him for the podcast, that immersing yourself in a place that even if you don't know the language, within 2 to 3 weeks, you start amassing enough words, and then beyond 3 weeks, I feel like the floodgates kind of open up, and you can start having these quasi conversations. What was your experience like with learning Spanish?
I think to learn any language, you basically have to go somewhere where if you want to eat, you have to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go with somebody that speaks the language already, because then you're just depending on them. It's like, oh, what did he say? What did she say? What does the menu say? No, you go by yourself, stick with it, and if you make the effort, people are very friendly.
Yeah.
They will take the time to try and understand you.
Yeah.
And, don't be an ugly American, just try and communicate. And the worst part is when you get to the place where you can say a few sentences more or less fluently,
and then they run with it,
and then they run with it, and it's like, and you're going, I didn't understand a bit of that. You're going, slow down, wait.
I would like to think that because I can roll my R's properly, having grown up in California, and having Spanish-speaking friends, taking a little bit of Spanish, that I can do that. I can say a couple things decently, and then they fire off, and then I have to come back and say, oh no, poquito español.
Yeah, that's very common.
Oh man! So, what was the first fish that you saw down here that really blew you away, seeing it in life for the first time? Like,
oh boy, that's a tough question. I think maybe the knife fishes. I mean, just because they have such a unique way of moving, and they've got the long ventral fin that runs the whole length of the body, and undulation, and they can go forward and backward with it. It's just kind of a super cool thing, and they also communicate electrically. I mean, they generate electrical impulses. They actually have courtship songs that are electrical pulses. It's really bizarre. It's really unique.
And to my credit now, actually, let's put you on the spot. So what was the knife fish that I caught today?
Gymnotus? Coatsai.
Yeah. Awesome.
One of the really, really spectacular knife fish.
Yeah.
Sort of black and white and brown with some circles on it in the forward part of the body.
Yeah, saying that, there's potentially a really pretty knife fish in these waters, and I had just caught it without really telling anybody. For me, I just lit up in like a proud moment, because I haven't been the person bringing in the most fish, but I feel like
that's always the crew.
I'm like bringing in that one fish, and Devon got excited. Yes,
and that was the only one we caught today. So
and so the plan is to take that home. I think I might put together an oddball tank from this trip of some of the smaller species catfish that we have. That knife fish. Hopefully they play well together. But definitely,
catfish and knife fish should be compatible.
Yeah, so definitely taking that guy home and enjoy, because people have heard me before say that there's certain fish that I appreciate, but I would never keep, and I would squarely put the knife fish in that category. But now just having that experience of I'm the one that caught it out.
I caught it. Yeah.
We already feel like it's a unique one. It's a beautiful knife fish. So it's the only one we got.
I'm continually having people tell me, "Oh, remember that trip that I was on 6, 7, 8 years ago? I still have this XYZ fish species from that trip," and it sort of ties everything back to that trip. I mean, every time you look at that fish, they're reminded of their time down here, and obviously they stay in contact. They come back again. We have one person on this trip I think it's his 14th time back.
George.
George of the jungle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely funny. Some of the stories, just going back. Which time was that? Which time was that? Which trip was that? And it's like, well, there's 14 of them to choose from.
And I'm always going, I can't possibly remember. I've been on 30 trips since you were on that one.
Yeah. Do you feel pressure when people like myself that this is their first time coming? We arranged, kind of moved heaven and earth to get kid coverage for a toddler and a baby. When somebody like that comes down here, do you feel pressure to put people on fish, to give them that experience or do you just know it's going to happen?
Not really, because, we always catch fish. The crew know all the local spots. We've been doing this long enough that we have a very good idea of where you can get particular types of fish. And so more for me, it's finding out, okay, what kind of fish are the different clients interested in? And then we can sort of pick spots to go collecting or habitat types where we can maximize the probability that they'll get the fish that they really want. Like we want everybody to go home happy.
Yeah, for me it was the only thing really coming into the trip that I knew that if I could bring home I would really want to would be the discus. And we've already secured that, and so that's been, that was, I don't want to say a pressure relief on my own shoulders, but, that's just like icing on the cake before we've even started the trip. So that was awesome.
Yeah, one check mark or a box ticked off, and it's like, okay, done that.
Well, the biggest piece for me is just the experience. In my broken Spanish, communicating with the crew, them asking me if it's my first time in Peru, and what's my favorite fish, what am I trying to catch? I told them I like discus, and so we've got those. They know that. But just telling them, the experience, going out and actually catching whatever it is we catch, and hanging out with the fellow collectors and hanging out with the crew and just, experiencing this remarkable place.
And seeing some of the fish that brought in. This evening, those fish that the crew were buying from local fishermen, like giant tiger shovel-nosed catfish.
Yeah.
That biggest one was, 40 pounds, 50 pounds?
Huge. And actually, I would say, seeing the discus is like, oh, cool, those are discus from here.
Yeah.
But seeing the tiger shovel-nosed catfish, that's amazing. Like, and then actually interacting with it, feeling the hard bone of its head and just how hard that is, and seeing the iridescence of its skin so close up and the patterning of the stripes, that's just an incredible experience.
And the other day when the local fishermen, they knew we were collecting fish, and they brought in the Jurency catfish, the one with the sort of vertical stripes on it, but really, really, really long antenna. Brachyplatystoma Jurency, I don't know what you call it in the trade, but that retails for $400 or $500 back in the U.S.
Wow.
And they just gave it to us because it was too small for them to sell or eat.
Yeah.
And that one's going back to the U.S.
Yeah. How would you describe so let's say, this audience of the Aquarius podcast, somebody that's on the fence of, do I go down there? Do I not? Like somebody that's really passionate and wants to potentially one day, like it's on their bucket list, right? Like, what would you say to push them over? Like, what would be your thoughts on it?
Well, if you love fish and you really want to see where they live in nature, and the types of habitats they come out of, and to have a better idea of how to take care of your own fish. If you know where they come from, the kind of water quality, the kind of habitat that they're coming out of, you're going to be more successful at breeding them, at caring for them. And plus, it's just a hell of a lot of fun to be able to point at a tank and say, yeah, I caught those. I got those personally and brought them back, and now I'm breeding them. Like I did when I was a kid. I thought the Amazon was just so remote and so far away. It really isn't.
It's really not. Yeah.
I mean, from Florida to here where we are now, it's a 5-hour flight from Miami to Lima, and then another hour-and-a-half flight to Iquitos, and you're in the heart of the Peruvian Amazon.
Yeah.
So, it takes me longer to fly to the West Coast from Florida than it takes me to come down here to the Amazon. So it's, not that remote. And there's a lot of amenities now when you come down here. For some people, they're worried about, well, I don't speak Spanish, how am I going to get along? One of the things that people always comment on after trips is the thing that surprised them the most was how nice everybody was, how friendly people were.
Yeah.
And, we've seen that the last couple of days. You show up at a village and ask if you can go fishing in their creek. Yeah, sure, go ahead. And the kids come along and they help out. We had several young guys helping with catching fish and carrying the buckets today. And they were having a blast, too. I mean, they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
from Iquitos, my day and a half, 2 days in Iquitos, before we even got on the boat, I was already having an incredibly pleasant experience, and a lot of patience and a lot of just a very relaxed atmosphere, even in Iquitos. From the people. My hotel was right across from Plaza de Armas. Is I think the pronunciation of that?
Yep, Plaza de Armas.
Yeah, Plaza de Armas.
Central square of town.
And all the families go out at around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. They all
it's
flood
very,
the market.
very social scene, very family oriented.
Yeah. So Neil and I, we were sitting kind of on the statue steps, and watching kids play with their parents and play with each other, and it was just awesome. And there were, of course, the little kids were kind of gawking, like, oh, ooh, who are these guys? You don't look like you're from around here. But it was all, it was all in fun. They're just little kids being curious and, asking, are you Estados Unidos? And yes.
Yeah, and people, if they know a little bit of English, they always want to try it out. Yeah. And, you don't have that sense of separateness down here. I mean, you become instantly part of the social scene, part of the culture, and, people are wonderful.
Now, having done this for so long, let's ask the question of, what's the most common thing that people are unprepared for that you would then try to empower people coming down? Like, you'd really hammer these 1 or 2 points home, like, all right, guys, most people, we try to tell them this, and they don't do it, or, they forget this item. Like, what's that piece of advice that you would give somebody, or 2 pieces of advice when they come down here?
Read the literature that we send you.
It's exhaustive. Yeah, you guys
because there is a lot of information in there, but then you have people that don't read it, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't know I should have brought that. Well, it's like, well, you didn't read what we sent you. A good flashlight, rechargeable battery, basic medical kit to take care of whatever might ail you. You probably know if you're going to be really susceptible to insect bites. Come prepared. Come prepared for a strong sun. If you burn easily, bring some lightweight long sleeve shirts, old dress shirts. Go to Goodwill, pick them up.
My tan is looking good.
You're looking great.
I'll say that right now.
Yeah. No, but I always tell people, go through your closet, bring the stuff that you haven't worn in 6 months, or go to Goodwill, pick up a few things, and for collecting clothes. When you're out in the bush, tromping through mud, I mean, we had mud that was well over our knees today in a couple places with thorny palm fronds, and had some awesome fish there, but just long pants, long sleeves.
Well, the contrast between what you and the crew wear, and I squarely put you in the same category as the crew, because you are working so hard. You're the tip of the spear when we're collecting. But yeah, I mean,
I'm doing it because I'm having fun.
So you're rocking board shorts. They're like normal cotton board shorts, right? You're now wearing a quick dry shirt. Cotton socks is what you're wearing with your rubber boots.
Yep, pretty much.
And the crew, t-shirts, tank tops, jeans, Chuck Taylors. I think I saw one of the guys wearing Chucks.
Yep.
Cotton polos, and then all of us on the trip, we are like in the Quick Dry, Columbia, North Face, like we're just geared. Not Tony, but for most of us, we're geared out in like the high tech gear. And yet we're the ones catching the fewest fish, and it's very, very funny to see that contrast. Because from just a pure equipment standpoint, you'd be like, oh, those guys, they look like they're going on safari, man. They know what they're doing. And it's the barefoot guy in the cargo shorts that's doing all the work.
Well, again, there's no fashion police down here, so...
No, there's really not.
Yeah.
I think so far what I've noticed is just your ability to wash off in the river, take a quick shower with your collecting clothes on, let them hang dry. I definitely overpacked on the collecting items. Like, I honestly...
Yeah. No, some of the places we're getting into are so incredibly muddy. That mud is never going to come out entirely. So, pick a old pair of serviceable shirts and shorts or long sleeve shirts and pants. And, you just hang them out. And, every time I go collecting, I just pull on the same stuff again. It's
those pants, though, that I've worn...
not going to get any cleaner.
the pants that I've worn now for all of our collecting, I jump in the shower, hit the river, and I've actually... The mud's been coming off.
Those ones actually do seem to shed the mud very efficiently. What brand are they?
Those are just marmots from Costco.
Okay.
So the marmot brand, when you buy it at REI, you're probably paying like $60, but Costco had them for $29.
Yep.
So I bought.
Yeah, go for it.
I brought 3 pairs.
Yep.
I'm only ever going to wear that one pair.
Yeah,
so
sure,
I already packed too many clothes for this trip, but better to be prepared, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I guess people don't realize when they come down here is Peru is moving into kind of like that middle tier of countries in terms of development. So if you forget something, or if you lose your luggage, or the airlines doesn't deliver your luggage, you can pretty much get everything that you need in Iquitos, and often quite a bit cheaper than you can get it in the U.S. So, it's like, don't freak out if you forgot something or if you need something. We get rubber boots here, and, they're a third the cost that they would be in the U.S.
Yeah.
And you don't have to carry them.
Yeah.
More space in your luggage.
And I would imagine, too, that there's a level of camaraderie already amongst us that are on this trip where, oh, Neil, the airline lost your luggage.
Yep.
Here, do you need to borrow shorts? Do you need to borrow a shirt? Like, what do you need to make this trip still be great for you? And, I'm sure if you ask Neil this, and I will when I get him in the hot seat, that he would have loved to have had his luggage, right? That he packed his clothes. But at the same time, like, everybody's willing to,
well, he wasn't letting it ruin his trip either.
No, not at all.
It's like, my luggage didn't show up. Nothing I can do about it. We already got somebody working on it.
Yeah.
Guillermo, our transfer agent, he's taking care of it. So if he can't solve it, I'm certainly not going to be able to. So
well, that's another.
And
piece.
he did solve it. So
that's another piece too. It's not like in my head, maybe a lot of people, they would think that the people putting on this trip are just those that are on the boat. But that's not a true statement, because Guillermo is in Iquitos.
Yep.
And he's running things behind the scenes too. So
absolutely.
There's a level of support and infrastructure behind this that I actually didn't even expect coming into this. I just figured whoever was on the boat was a part of the trip, and that's how it's going to be. But we could give him a call, and if there was something that was desperately needed, and he would just jump in a fast boat and meet up with the mothership and take care of us.
No, we have a good support team back in Iquitos. So our general manager puts on all the food and the fuels and everything else that we need in terms of supplies. We have Guillermo who meets you at the airport, takes you back to the airport. If a flight is canceled or delayed, we'll work to get you on a different flight, especially when you're going back to the States and you can't miss that international connection. Yeah. The crew are all jack of all trades. They do a little bit of everything. Everybody pitches in and does what's necessary. And
I say this in a positive way, but that hand-holding and that guiding that you guys actually provide, for somebody coming down here for the first time, or somebody that's maybe on the fence, going to a South American or an African or a Southeast Asian country might be out of their comfort zone.
Yep.
If you come on this trip, you will have, again, hand-holding, but in such a positive way that, you're going to hit the ground running. Like, you're going to have a support team that's going to absolutely take care of you if you come down to this trip, and then all you have to do is just focus on how much fun you're going to have, taking the local Iquitos culture while you're there, taking the culture of all these little villages that we stop at, and just enjoy when the kids all run out to see the boat and, the collecting, and, you can just focus on all that and not all the moving pieces that are behind the scenes that you guys are helping to take care of.
Yeah, well, for instance, Corey and Dean arrived Monday morning instead of on Sunday, so... the boat was already upriver, but, we had it all set up. They went from the airport to the port, bought some boots on the way, and, they were up here for breakfast. So, it was, they didn't have to worry about the details. We had that all taken care of. Guillermo and Fernando, our general manager, had that all arranged ahead of time, so it was an easy connection.
Yeah. And I think we've talked a real good bit about this expedition up to so far with kind of some highlights. If somebody wanted to come on this trip, a little bit about what they could expect. But something that I think is really important and that I personally want to know more about is just Project Amazonas. So can you tell me a little bit about Project Amazonas?
Yeah, Project Amazonas is a nonprofit, U.S. Peruvian nonprofit that was born out of MT Amazon expeditions. Basically, the person that started MT Amazon expeditions and some of his clients, many years ago, they got together and they said, we need to do something to give back to the communities on these rivers. At that time, the Peruvian economy was horrible. There was no development, no medical work, anything like that out in the rural areas. And so they got together and they incorporated as a nonprofit organization. Some of those original people are still board members today. And over the years, we've developed a couple of research stations and forest reserves that not only preserve the habitat, but they also provide a great location for courses, for researchers of all levels, whether they're undergraduate students or graduate students or senior researchers, working on bigger projects. So they're available for that. We take ecotourists there. They help to finance the running of the stations, upgrades, salaries for the caretakers. And then we also do a lot of medical service trips over the course of the year. Basically, the boat that we're on, when it's not being used for a trip like this, it's going community to community on some of the smaller rivers or more isolated rivers. And we basically take over the school or the community hall if they have one, and we'll do clinic for the day. And everything is entirely free. We have a Peruvian dentist, a Peruvian doctor that come along. A lot of medical students who volunteer, other medical people. We have a lot of medical students from the U.S. and from England or the United Kingdom that come, various other Europeans, Australians, Canadians. Next year, we've got 6 students from Hong Kong, medical students from Hong Kong that are planning on coming.
Wow.
And a scattering from South America, Argentinians, Uruguayans, Colombians. It's a very rewarding sort of thing to do. And it also sort of sets the stage for trips like this, because we go to these rivers, we're doing medical service work, we're not espousing any political agenda, any religious agenda, any social agenda. It's like, no, we're just here to provide medical care, whatever is needed. We don't care who you voted for or, what religion you practice, doesn't matter. But then when we come back to these communities with a fish collecting group, for instance, people already know who we are. They know that we don't have some ulterior motive that we're pushing, and we're always welcomed. Like the guy in this community here, one of the aldermen of the community, he knew who I was. He's seen me here a number of times, and said, "Oh, you're always welcome." And we left off a donation of medical supplies for the community first aid kit. We build up a good level of trust over many years. I've been coming down here for 26 years now, 27. I can't do the math. So people on a lot of these rivers, they recognize us, they recognize the boat, they know the crew. We're part of a bigger community. And then, one of the fun things is to be able to make people like you that come on these trips part of that community as well. And, some communities, maybe stop there in the afternoon. They got a soccer game going on. The crew all want to join. Any of you guys want to join? You're always more than welcome. But, you got to chip in a couple of solas because they always play for money.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. It keeps the competition honest.
Nice. There haven't been any soccer matches, but I'm definitely, Neil and I have been talking about it, and yeah, that'd be good times if we can get in on one.
Yeah, no, we'll have to, Sundays there are always soccer matches, but other times of the week, if we show up, they have a decent soccer pitch, it's like, they'll be up for playing.
So this boat, is it used more than for these medical expeditions, or is it used more for the ecotourism trips? Is it kind of even?
It's probably about half and half.
Okay.
The boat is probably on medical trips 18 to 20 weeks out of the year, and then we have some academic courses that use it, ecotour trips that use it, and of course then there's downtime too.
But that's a pretty strong percentage though of the amount of time that this boat is in service to such an amazing cause of just without asking, here's medical stuff. Let's give you some. Let's set up clinic and let's give some medical service to these remote areas that otherwise it'd be 4 or 5 hour.
It can be anywhere up to 8 to 12 hours to get to the closest medical post, and that's dependent on whether they have fuels. That's with the little pecky 2-stroke outboard motor, dragon tail thing. In the past, when we first started, nobody had those. If somebody wanted to go to a clinic, they had to paddle a canoe the entire way, and that could be 2 days.
Yeah, and then these kinds of collecting trips, though, with hobbyists, help to fund those medical
Absolutely.
trips, correct?
Yep.
So if anybody was looking for...
Pretty much all the proceeds go back into the organization, into Project Amazonas. So.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just, I'm down here having an amazing time collecting fish that I'll bring back home with me at some point in the future. But to also know that, proceeds from this will just continue to be reinvested into the community with something amazing like healthcare. I mean, that's just fantastic.
And baby monkeys.
Yeah.
I'm having a Quasimodo moment here on my shoulder. He's doing a little bit of twitching.
Nice. All right, Devon, so how can people find out more about MT Amazon? If they're interested, give me some links, give me some contact information, and that way when this episode posts, we'll have some quick links for people to follow up.
Yep. Okay. So if you are interested in the ecotour trips, you can just Google Margarita Tours, which is the old name, or MT, just the letters M and T, and then Amazon Expeditions, and that'll pop up. If you're interested in Project Amazonas and what's happening on that front, just Google Project Amazonas, Amazonas, the Spanish spelling, and it'll pop up right away.
Nice. Do you guys do any Instagram posts while we're out collecting? Do you take any photos and post up? Well, I know you guys take photos.
I take a lot of photos, but somebody set me up with Instagram 2 years ago, and I've never gone on. When I'm back in the States, I'm on the computer 12 hours a day, just doing coordination and emails and budgets and all of that, and so I just don't do social media. And then when I'm down here, I don't have the option. So
Oh, and dinner's ready. What perfect timing.
Dinner's ready. Yeah.
All right, Devon. Well, thank you very much for jumping in the hot seat live in Peru on the Amazon. And like I said, I've had such an amazing time. So thank you very much for all of your hard work and the hard work that you and the crew are going to put in for these next few days. Definitely appreciate it. And yeah, anybody interested, you're going to hear me talk about how amazing this trip was for months and months and months. So check out the links and learn more about MT Amazon. So Devon, thank you very much, and let's go have some dinner.
Okay, thank you. My pleasure.